Hi, welcome back to Academic Writing with Ella. This video is all about the mystery that is academic writing style. It's a classic thing that lots and lots of people struggle with. I know I struggled with it a lot at the very beginning of my experience as a university student, and so we're going to uncover what even is academic style today, because you probably at the very beginning of your university journey have just moved on from A-levels, BTEC access courses where you were confident in how to write an essay that got you a top grade, and then all of a sudden whatever you were doing is no longer good enough or right, and you can't put your finger on it because you get what you're meant to be talking about and you understand the content, but for some reason how you write or what you write just keeps being told it's not quite that. And this is probably linked to something called academic writing style. You might have been told it looks like you're understanding it, but your academic writing style's all wrong, and you're thinking, yeah, but what even is that? It's a nightmare. It's such a pain in the butt. Like when I was a first year student, I really struggled to get anything above like a 55. Everything was just stuck there, even though I really confidently knew what I was doing. And I was thinking, hang on a minute. A few months ago, I was writing essays in bloody Spanish that would get me an A, and now I can't even write in my home language of English and get a grade that I know that I can get that was higher than what I was achieving. So after doing some thinking and figuring out and reading, it all kind of clicked, and over the last 10 years since then it's just got better and better and better. And so I'm going to help you figure out what is that magic secret to academic writing style. And the first place to begin is, I'm afraid, to figure out what academic writing style looks like and sounds like. The best thing to do is read loads of it. Read loads of it. The more you read academic writing, so textbooks, journal articles, those kind of things, the more familiar you will get with the style, with the tone, with the word choice, with the formality, with how things are put together and how the same point is expressed in that style. Because if you're normally reading narrative fiction books, you will typically find that you're writing in a storytelling way, right? You might have had that as feedback of your lecturer saying, this is some storytelling, this is a very narrative style, try and go for a formal academic style. It makes sense that that's how you're writing because that's how you normally write. Or if you're reading lots of popular science books, yes, they're fantastic for, you know, introducing you to new subjects, but they're often written with less of a fourth wall. There's less of a distance between the author of a popular science book like The Body Keeps the Score versus the scientist whose papers have informed that reading book, or a textbook that would cover the same topic. So it's really important not only that you figure out what the difference is between an academic and a non-academic source, but the more that you read academic texts, the more normal that kind of writing and reading will become to you, and therefore it will be a lot more easier and familiar to get going in that way. One of the things that I see most often as a lecturer when I'm marking work is people missing academic style because of their tone, and they're doing something that I call transcript voice, which is essentially, it reads like this is a transcription of a conversation that they've had telling their friend about the topic. Far too casual, far too informal, very much like a spoken piece. And I think it's useful to think about the term code switching. You might have heard of code switching, how you talk and behave amongst your friends will look very different to how you might talk in a professional context, whether that's with colleagues or with customers, right? We've all got a phone voice. We've all got a phone voice, and that is code switching. You will use certain words, you will use certain terms, you will culturally fit your friend and family culture, and then you will go to work and you will culturally fit the professional culture. We've got another one, we're going to culturally fit academic culture. We're going to lean into it. And as one of my students called it, putting your smarty pants on. So putting your smarty pants on looks like thinking about how you phrase the same point. If you were to record me talking about, I don't know, least restrictive practice and telling my friends what that was, and then transcribed it, and then you recorded me giving a lecture on the same topic, making the same points, discussing the same concepts, again, transcribe that, get a second very different piece. And then if I were to write about least restrictive practice, making the same points, conveying the same concepts, you would have 3 really different pieces of text, and you should have 3 really different pieces of text. How you articulate the same idea in those 3 very different contexts should look different. So when you're writing for an academic text, get your smarty pants on and think about how should this be presented within that style. Something that's super common with that really casual narrative style, with that transcript voice, is casual, informal word choice and phrasing. And this is such an easy fix to make that will totally level up what you're doing. If you're writing in a really informal way, it kind of downgrades the ideas that you're presenting, because you're writing a formal piece of work. It's a professional document. Even if you're thinking, oh, Ella, it's only a piece of coursework, yeah, it's still a professional document. Even on a non-accredited course, it's still a professional document, and you want to reflect your skill and your knowledge as best as you can. And this is one of those process skills that will enhance your content knowledge skills. So I've got 2 versions of sentences inspired by real life that I'm going to show you their origin in an informal way, and then we are going to improve them into a formal phrasing of the exact same thing. We're going to express the same thing, moving it from a casual, informal way to a formal way. So my first one is: the focus point of this assignment is going to be about how the cognitive decline was identified. So that changes to, for me, the current paper will focus on the assessment and identification of cognitive deterioration. So there's a few very subtle changes in there. It's almost the exact same thing, but there's important changes in there. The first change I made was cognitive decline to cognitive deterioration, because we're going to use the taught professional terms. We don't say cognitive decline. If you're writing a patient's note, you're not writing cognitive decline. You're talking about deterioration of a symptom, deterioration of mental health. So cognitive deterioration, we're going to make sure we're using the academic terms there. The other thing that you will see a lot in papers when they are referring to themselves, there's a weird distance, right? And this is to do with sort of the philosophy of science and who is doing science. And that's a bigger conversation for a very different video, and I probably won't cover that myself. But because of that, there's an expected level of detachment. And so you're not talking about this assignment and I'm going to be doing this. You're talking about the current paper or the current study. Particularly if there are other studies by the same authorship that are being referenced, you will notice that in a published paper, but the current paper will focus on. And so we're changing that detachment. And then the other thing is just tidying up the language. We're being direct. There is no bonus words. There is no bonus sentences. Every single thing that is said in an academic text has value and purpose. Every single sentence has a role to play. It has a purpose. And so I'm going to get rid of informal phrasing and excessive phrasing. So we're going to change the focus point of this assignment is going to be about how to the focus is, right? Much quicker, much shorter. We're not seeking to fill a word count. We've got enough to say, right? You've got enough ideas, you've got enough stuff to say. You're not trying to fill a word count. The focus is. Second example is the patient had wounds all over their arms and legs, and that becomes the patient presented with multiple wounds on their limbs. Now, I'm going to caveat, if we can describe those wounds, that would be fantastic. If we can talk about, is this a self-inflicted wound? Is this an injury? Is this a burn, a cut? Is this an ulcer? What kind of wound is it? Are there lots of small wounds? Is this one mega wound? Like, we're not going to use the term mega wound, but because that's not academic style. But what is this wound? And that is a really nice way of presenting that professional knowledge. The term all over, that little phrase, is very emotive, and it's fantastic if you were writing a novel about, oh my goodness, character so-and-so, they've been found and they've got wounds all over their arms and legs. It's very emotive, it's very dramatic. It's not academic. It's not professional. It's not formal. It's fantastic if you're writing a narrative piece and you want it to be exciting and emotive. Academic work is not normally written to be exciting and emotive. It is exciting in some ways when you find something new, but it is not written for clickbait or drama or excitement. It's not phrased in that way. So we're going to swap out all over and just say it's across the body. And then going back to that professional language point, we're going to change the patient had wounds, very vague, very loose, to the patient is presenting with. This is again professional language used in healthcare environments. We always talk about the symptoms that someone is presenting with, particularly in healthcare roles where we're not the ones making conclusions about what someone's got going on. As a nurse, I'm not diagnosing anyone. That's not my role, that's not my responsibility, that's not appropriate for me. So I'm not going to come to a conclusion that the patient has a stomach ache. I'm going to talk about the patient is presenting with abdominal pain, and then I'm going to describe my pain. So the patient is presenting with wounds, I'll describe the wounds, but I'm not going to say the patient has, it doesn't fit, it's not professionally appropriate, it's not how we talk within this environment. And it's something to keep in mind as well if you're someone that is writing patient notes. The next thing that I would suggest is reviewing your use of first person language. This is I's, me's, my's, we's. As much as you might be talking about stuff that you've done, in a lot of contexts, it's not appropriate to review, like present yourself as an individual within your work. And that will feel weird, right? Unless you're writing a reflective piece, in which case absolutely tell me all about yourself, because you're meant to be reflecting on you and your actions. There are some method sections where it's acceptable and appropriate for you to use I and we, and this is more common in more flexible scientific philosophies, and almost certainly something you will see in quals only and not in quantitative methods. But by and large, for the majority of experiments and for a lot of critical analysis, you will not see references to the self. So you might see the author suggests, or like anything that is, it's a weird detachment. There's a lot of like strange work around, but instead of I will be discussing adverse childhood experiences, the impact of adverse childhood experiences will be discussed in relation to mental health. So it's changing, I'm doing this to this is happening. And it's quite strange to get your head around, but once you've got it, it's a lot easier to get used to. My final piece of advice for getting your academic writing style up to scratch is not necessarily a phrasing thing, as the other points have been, but it's actually more of a structure thing. What you will find the more that you read is there's almost like a predictability to academic writing. First there's this, then there's that, and here's an alternative perspective, but ultimately this is the outcome. And it's very clear, logical flow from one point to the next, sentence by sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, almost to the point where you know what's about to come next. You can kind of predict what they're about to tell you, and then they'll tell you the fantastic new thing that their work has discovered, right? There's always something new that has been learned and is being presented, but ultimately there is the build up to that is predictable, it is logical, it is clearly structured, and every single sentence has a purpose. Every single sentence is adding something. It is concise, it is precise, it is specific. There is no extra fluff at all. So it's a bigger picture thing, a bit more of a structure thing, but that is something that will really, level up your academic writing style. So if you have found this really helpful, please give the video a thumbs up. It really does help to know what you're finding useful, to know what you're interested in. If you've got questions about academic writing style, stick it in the comments. I'm more than happy to help you rephrase stuff or help you think about what's wrong with this sentence, like how is this not academic writing. And if you haven't already, click the subscribe button, because we will have more videos coming very soon, and I will see you there. Goodbye.